I think most of us are here. Welcome to End of Life Preparation Week 4. Can you believe we're already more than halfway through? It goes so quickly. So quickly. We need another 6 weeks. By way of poem, inspiration, prayer, opening, I'm gonna share a little 1-minute video with you. And I hope the sound is good enough for you to hear. I'm gonna mute you, Peggy. If you're not muted, I'm gonna mute you because the background noise is tricky. Okay, welcome Linda, welcome Carla, welcome Tracy. All right, let me share screen with you and move this. Okay.
Hinduism
Can you all hear that?
called the Ananda Margi.
Okay. All right, I'm going to play this 1-minute video.
It's a spiritual path, and their teacher was Ananda Murthy, and his disciples begged him to write an autobiography, and he kept saying, "I have no time for such nonsense." Finally, after pestering, he said, "Fine, come back to me tomorrow. I'll have written my autobiography." Came to them the next morning. They were all so eager. What had he done in one night? And he pulled out one sheet of paper, and it said, "I was a mystery. I am a mystery. And I will always be a mystery." I was a mystery.
I don't hear it anymore.
So you stopped hearing it?
As soon as she started singing.
Let me try it again. Zoom is weird with sound. So let me give you a little background. That's Aditi Sethi. She runs the Center for Conscious Living and Dying here in Asheville, in Swannanoa, nearby here. And she's amazing. She's featured in a film called The Last Ecstatic Days, which I'm going to tell you about a little bit about later today. And she's talking to Charles Eisenstein. And Charles Eisenstein is an amazing author, writer. Many of you probably know him. He's written many, many books, Sacred Economics, the world the better world our hearts know is possible. So it's a really amazing, and she just does this 1 minute with this beautiful, and songs and chants are my theme to bring to you today. So I'm going to try it one more time. Maybe if I don't enlarge the screen. Yeah, if someone could, let's see, I'm going to share a portion of the screen so I can still see you all. Whoops. Yeah. Sorry. I lost the page. Give me a second. Meg and Tessa are joining. Okay, let me try again. I can see you now, so give me a thumbs up if you can hear.
Disciples begged him to write an autobiography.
Can you hear
Kept
now?
saying, I have no time for such nonsense. Finally, after pestering, he said, fine, come back to me tomorrow. I'll have written my autobiography. Came to them the next morning and I was so eager. What could he have done in one night? And he pulled out one sheet of paper and it said, I was a mystery, I am a mystery, and I will always be a mystery. Was a mystery.
Something clicks on in the video. Anyway, she's singing, I was a mystery, I am a mystery, and I will always be a mystery. So I have a few chants for you that I want to share. Music is a great way to feel our devotion through our whole body. I'll send you a link to that video, and Aditi is just such a gem. And is deep in the mystic death world, runs a whole organization around it. And her model is that people come to the center to die, and there's a whole slew of volunteers that they've trained up to be with people who are dying, and it's no cost. So it's this incredible model. And it's the Center for End of Life, the Center for Conscious Living and Dying. And it's a fabulous, if you're local, check it out. So I'll send you a link to that. Welcome, Meg and Tessa. I was fooling around with sound, so I didn't get a chance to see you right away. So I invite you to just take a minute to contemplate. I was a mystery. I am a mystery, and I will always be a mystery. Okay, I'm going to share this screen now. Oh, that moving around, I will have to do. Okay. So we are on week 4. Welcome to week 4. And I have my candle lit. I'll give you the link to the resource page so you can have access to it. And the link to this, so you can watch it later, is also here in the chat. Okay. So I want to review a little bit of what we did last week. We did wishes 3, 4, and 5, plus the addendum. We did the dementia directives. We did the most in the DNR forms, and we talked a little bit about death traditions. Yeah, we went through these forms. I know that it was really interesting, the broken links. I'm really appreciating the broken links challenge, and the DNR form is really no longer available on the North Carolina site. So I don't know exactly how for folks to get it remotely. Maybe post-COVID, they've taken it down and you can go to the Health and Human Services Department and get one, or to your local hospital. A little bit of a mystery there. Yeah, we did, we talked about the grief article and the traditions. So I'm gonna stop sharing any questions. I mean, we're moving out of the category of paperwork that was on the left, which is the sort of end of life, advanced life directives, living will, those pieces. We're moving out of that today. And I just want to open this space to see if there's any last comments, thoughts, suggestions, questions about that particular category of paperwork.
I have several questions. Um, the yellow form and the pink form, are those two different forms?
Yes.
And what's the difference?
So we went through the most document and the post document. So it's called most or post, depending on the part of the world you're in, and it's medical orders on scope of treatment. The yellow document is just the DNR, just a standalone do not resuscitate document. So you can go through the recording from last week, and we might have gone a little bit fast.
Yeah.
But you can sort of fast forward to that place and look at that pink document. It has exactly, section A, B, C, D, E, and it's the 1-page standalone version of Wish To. What do I want or not want done while I'm still alive? What kind of medical interventions do I want? So yeah, so you can review that. The bright pink is a point, and where you can do it and get it, and how you need a doctor to sign it. So go back.
And the pink one is the DNR one, right?
Oh, no, the pink one is the most or the post.
Oh, okay.
The bright yellow one, at least in our state, is the do not resuscitate order. It might be different in different places.
And you can get those from the hospital, both of them?
Should be able to get those from a local hospital or your health department.
Okay.
Sorry that it's been hard to track them down. Usually what their standard practice when you're admitted to some kind of medical system, their standard practice of a certain age and stage with a certain procedure. But usually you can find a way to get them and keep them in your document, in your folder.
My other question is the healthcare power of attorney. How does that differ from best wishes?
So we talked a lot about redundancy, how different organizations want different forms. And the 5 wishes is got a lot of things rolled into it as a template, and it's a great way for people to sort of enter their end of life thoughts, but it's too unwieldy for most medical systems, and they just want, and it's too woo-woo. We talked about that. They're like, I don't want all this, don't give me all this stuff. Just like, who's your healthcare power of attorney? Who's your medical person? Who's making decisions for you? And so a separate standalone document that has just that on it is really helpful for organizations that don't want to flip through these pages and don't want all this extra information. So the standalone, sometimes they are predetermined forms. And honestly, if you go to 3 different institutions, they might have 3 different forms. But there could be one that's for your state or one that's official that you can say, no, I already have one, here it is. But the 5 wishes is often too much for hospitals to navigate. Although, wasn't Brenda saying that they have them in the waiting room? And so it's really a mixed bag. It depends on who you're dealing with. Linda, you're muted.
You should be consistent if you have both, right? The 5
who your medical power of attorney is?
of your, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you for saying that. It's a really good idea that you don't have paperwork that contradicts each other. Because we're redundant, because we're doing all this redundant paperwork for the institutions that want the thing they want. It would be very confusing if you were unconscious and the people are like, what is going on here? There's 2 different people named here. Very good point. Thank you.
So you can have both your 5 wishes and your healthcare power of attorney documents. You can have both of them, but the hospital might only want to look at the one.
Exactly right. Yeah. The 5 wishes is a much more detailed, expansive, helpful guide for the people who are close to you, who are guiding your care. And some institutions want them and will take them.
Right.
Others are like, don't bother me. I want just, what's the facts, ma'am? Like, what is the streamlined document that you can give me? I want the most form and I want your healthcare power of attorney form. That's it.
Okay,
But
I got
since
it. Thank you.
yeah, since you entered the door through the 5 wishes, it's easy to do those other documents because it's just filling out the things you've already decided on.
Right. Thank you.
Yes. You know, there's not one universal system for much of anything in our world, and this is no different. I see Meg and then Tracy.
Yeah, thank you. Lee, can you remind us what the acronym MOST stands for?
Medical orders and scope of treatment.
Okay.
And then
And-
post is something similar, scope of treatment for sure.
Okay.
They want to know in a quick 1 page what you want and what you don't want, because when they're coming at you with resuscitation panels, they need to quickly scan what it is that you're okay with.
Yeah, and this is what people keep in the refrigerator or the freezer when they're home. Right.
Well, yes. I mean, all of the end of life paperwork, at least a copy of it can be there. But if it's really to serve that purpose of EMTs come in the door, and it's, usually if someone's in a very end stage or end of life condition, they have these things posted, on the wall, on the fridge, on the door, above the bed. I don't know that if you're, just living a normal, healthy life that you would do that, but you certainly could.
Cool. I have two more. One is,
Yeah.
I see that the Center for Conscious Living and Dying is in Swannanoa and that they offer a death doula training that's like
Okay.
eight online weeks plus a 3-day in-person retreat, and then you volunteer for 6 days at the bedside. And I wonder if you know anything about that or have known
Whatever
anybody.
they're doing, I recommend. I mean, they're just such a stellar team of folks doing community-based stuff that's affordable, accessible. They're just incredible. So I knew that program in some ways is their program so that you can become a volunteer at their center. But why not? It seems like it would be applicable and transferable to whatever. So yes, I highly, highly recommend CCLD.
Cool. It looks like they ask for a minimum of a 6-day like apprenticeship there.
In
And then you can
exchange for
volunteer.
taking the course kind of thing.
Yeah, I can't, it's a $3,000 course.
Yeah, that
Okay.
makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense. It's good.
Okay, and also just planting a seed. I have some questions that came up from conversations I had with my family about organ donation. And I'm wondering if we might get into that today. Can I just put a little like, I'm gonna have questions there.
Yeah, let's talk about that next time. And so could you keep a bookmark on that and we'll bring it up then? And you might even shoot me some questions ahead of time. There may be questions I don't know the answer to. And we can do a little bit of research. So those are my thoughts.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks. Okay, Linda. Okay, Tracy. Thank you. Yeah.
Yes. Is there ever a good reason for 2 people to be listed as the healthcare agent?
In the 5 wishes booklet, you have 3 choices, the first, second, and third. Really, the 5 wishes is straddling the line between legal and relational, is how I see it. It's like, it's trying to do some of both. In the healthcare power of attorney document, it's just like straight up legal. Really, one person can only be legally responsible for those decisions and have that authority. And the way that I've done it, you have seen my paperwork and my addendum, is I say, whoever's in that spot, please know you're supported by the collective decision-making process of the team, right? But really, one person is the bottom line. in those kinds of situations.
Okay. And obviously that person is best someone nearby. If things change, people move, the person who made these documents, if these are my documents and I age or have change in my health, is there a way of making it set so that whoever is nearby is the supported person? Like what if I'm the healthcare agent for someone and I'm like away or not available, but another trusted member of the team is? Like, how do
Yeah.
they handle that? Do they have to like reach the healthcare agent? You know, like, I guess I'm just unsure how it
Yeah.
works.
That's a great question. Gosh, I can imagine a bunch of different scenarios, but if you have, like, say you have the 1, 2, and 3, and your number 1 is not local, but your number 2 and number 3 are local, I'm very certain, not 100%, that anyone that's listed in those 3 can have the same equal power. Now, if number 1 showed up and said, I don't agree with number 2, number 1, I'm pretty sure would take the cake, would sort of have the authority. And then you'd have to look at your medical power of attorney document in your state to see if they list more than 1. It's a really good question. Generally speaking, something happened to the internet? Are you all hearing me okay?
You're back now, but you.
Yeah,
had
we
to-
lost you for a while.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what you missed, or so I'll say it again. I think it's a really good question, Tracy, with lots of different scenarios or variables. I can imagine a situation where if there were dire decisions to be made and healthcare agent number 1 and number 2 didn't agree, that healthcare agent number 1 would sort of win out in terms of authority. That's a legal question that I can't answer. I think also what matters is who the hospital staff is more familiar with, right? Like if there's been a healthcare agent that's been in the process for a whole week and then someone else shows up, they'd have to probably present legal documentation to say, like, I'm the one that's in authority. This person doesn't have the authority. I'm the top dog, kind of thing. These are very interesting questions. And you'll have to look at the medical power of attorney document, the legal one for your state, and see, I'm interested in the legal language of that. It's a really good question. What is the legal language of who's in authority over the other ones? In my ideal world, people would be cooperative and not combative around that kind of stuff. But that's my world. My ideal world is not always what's happening. So, do we have a freezing problem again? Hello?
Frozen.
I've been frozen.
It's off and on, off
Yeah,
and
you're
on.
Okay.
coming in and out. Your bandwidth is,
I usually have really good internet here. It's so tenuous sometimes. And how is it now?
Better.
Okay.
in this moment, it's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I guess we're just going to breathe through technical problems today. How much of that did you all get around the legal? You got enough? Okay. It's really tricky if your healthcare agents are struggling with each other. That sounds like a very tricky situation. So I would give that some additional thought. And hopefully folks are on the same page. I don't know
I
if
have
I answered your question, Tracy. Your question really wasn't about conflict. Your question was about listing two people, and I think they have to be in order, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, thank you. No,
Yeah.
you very much. That was helpful. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Michael,
I have a question returning to my nomadic. Um, Even though I have children, I mean, I just have this gay man's nomadic consciousness. And what if I just want to trust hospice, meaning wherever I am, I don't know where I'll be. I travel a lot. And I just write it to whom it may be concerned. I don't know. Is that how
yeah,
I would do it?
I
And
love.
I feel very much more secure in this mysterious way than in the way of finding, using the normative, finding my kids and this and that. I want to let them be free.
I love this. I love your questions. I love this so much. And it really highlights, asking for what we want, not conforming to some kind of system or process that other people want for us. I love it. And I think with kids and close people like that, I think what it's going to take is some conversations. And if you could find a way to beautifully write this in your addendum, which is, I'm a nomad. I live, oh, God, this is unstable. Good. We're good. Okay.
Still good.
If you could write in your addendum, your heart's desire, which what I'm hearing is I'm going to trust the mystery. And if I drop dead in the middle of some fabulous experience, I'm thrilled about that. I want my people to celebrate that. And if I'm in Timbuktu and I decide, and I'm sick and I'm in hospice, I might just stay there. Like, I'm not going to cater to what other people need from my death. I want freedom, I want wildness, and those are my guiding lights. I just think that you need to own that. I love it. I absolutely love it. And some conversations with your children who might have some grief about that, disappointment about that, or fear about that. That's legitimate. Like, they can have disappointment, grief, and fear. And if you could hold some space for them to experience that and still stay true to what's alive for you, I think that's beautiful.
And thank you. And then how do I travel around with that little package, that envelope? So wherever it happens, I give it to the hospice people, wherever I am, kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, I think you're just going to need to trust the mystery. If you put it out to the universe and your kids and your lovers and the people and you're like, I just want to flow with the flow. And if you get that, you get that. And if you don't get that, you don't get that. It's like the rest of us. I want to die peacefully in my bed or surrounded by my loved ones. And, then I'm out on the highway dying. So, who knows?
Thank you.
All you can do is put your wishes out there. Susan.
Yeah, I just want to say, comment on Michael's situation. I think it's really valuable for him to write out exactly what he wants and to put that across to his kids. Because I know if I was his daughter and I didn't know that he felt this way, I would feel guilty.
Yeah.
Thinking that I hadn't done what I was supposed to have done for him and not realizing that it was perfectly okay.
Well,
So,
sure, that's one aspect. And his kids might also be like, but that's not what I want. I want to be near him and around him. And that's about me, right? And so then you get to negotiate some of that, like, hey, if I'm in the States, feel free to come by. If I'm not, feel free to come by or not. Like, I think, this is holding space for some emotions, some expectations, doing some, laying out your design so that they're like, okay, this is who dad is, and here's how I need to work with my own process. And you can encourage them to take end of life classes, this or something else, so that they can get more literate, and maybe they're projecting onto you what they want for themselves. So, this is a sweet opportunity to start teasing these things apart.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Michael. Good questions, y'all. Other questions on our end of life directives category? We are moving out of this today. You can always ask questions later, but this is the transition moment. How's it going with buddies? Is that being supportive to folks? Great. Yeah. Okay. Anything on death traditions, ethnic, spiritual death traditions? Karen.
I had a conversation with my daughter about creating a death team, and it was a beautiful, beautiful conversation. But a while ago, like a few years ago, I knew I always wanted to be cremated. And so the Celtic traditions are burning on a pyre, the old, and the Vikings and such. So that is my heritage. But then I don't know, for some reason I got away from it, and maybe you can answer this, but I heard that it's really environmentally not good, cremation. And so then I thought, okay, so I should go with the natural burial.
Yeah.
Anyway, in all this speaking, and I'd like to hear more about that, but in all the talking with Cheyenne about it, we came back to the cremation because I also am a nomad and travel all over. And I did check into transporting bodies across state lines, and that if it's not a short one, that requires embalming and just a big mess. And so we kind of circled back to maybe cremation really is the best option for me.
Yeah.
Especially if I die in another place.
Yeah, so there's lots more options besides burial and cremation, and we're going to go deep into it next week. So
Okay.
awesome. Hold your questions and we'll totally get there.
Okay. But being burned is still a Celtic thing, so maybe that's
Yeah.
not bad.
Yeah.
I'm really happy, Karen, you spoke up. I feel a fellow nomad here. But I'm also, because of this workshop, my focus now is on the period till I transition and go out on my last breath. And I don't really care anymore about what happens to the body afterwards. So I also signed up, and I pay monthly for Recompose, but it's state lines, Recompose, yeah, state lines. And I'm thinking of canceling that. So you're not the only one who's like regurgitating all of this stuff. So thank you.
I love that y'all are bringing these unique perspectives, because it helps everybody see, oh, I have a unique perspective in this way, right? I may not be a nomad, but I have this perspective, and it's welcome and it's good. And so bravo to you all. Thank you. And yeah, that I care about this forward and not this after. So I love that. I love that. All right, end of life checklist. Anybody need help filling out or making next steps? I mean, there's a lot of this work you're going to need to do on your own. I'm going to mute you, Denise, and you, Michael, just background noise, tricky. Take a minute to take a look at your checklist and see if there's anything else, on all of that end of life directive stuffs that you need to make a note about. And when you get with your buddy, talk about this as well. Right. Right. That's awesome, Meg. That's a nice thing about having a nomad for a buddy. They'll come visit you. Love that. All right. Bless you, technology today. Bless your heart. Just bless your heart. Okay, here we go. I'm actually a Yankee, but I've learned some good phrases from y'all Southerners. All right, here we go today. Today, we did some integration and review. We're going to look at some financial considerations and some resources. And if I have time, I'm going to tell you some after death stories. But before, I still want to do a little bit of integration and heart-based stuff, which is, since we've been contemplating this for 3 weeks, going into 4 weeks, what for you, if you can tune into your body and into your heart, what makes for a good death? How does it live in you? Maybe you can write this journal prompt down and maybe journal with this question this coming week, but just for right now, it's the realm of poets and mystics, but for you, what makes for a good death? If you have a phrase or a word, you can type it in the chat or you can unmute and just say it. What makes for a good death? Being present to all of life, being present to my own death. That's Karen. Beautiful. Being present. Being present. So beautiful. I really love that. Thank you. Being present to all of life, being present to my own death. Peace and harmony, fresh air, sounds of the natural world. Yes, very nice, Karen. Thank you. Who else? What makes for a good death? Susan. Susan writes, easy come, easy come. Easy go, easy come. I love it. Thank you.
Lee, I just have to point out that you gave Karen the credit for my answer, which was peace and harmony. and
Oh
peace-
gosh, I'm so sorry.
That was me. I get the points.
Meg, thank you.
I did thank
So
Karen.
Meg writes, peace and harmony, being able to breathe fresh air, natural world, and being present. Karen, got it.
I'm
Thank
saying
you.
thanks, like, yes, Karen, agreeing with my buddy.
Yeah, got it. Thank you, Meg. Oh, Misha, celebrating death as much as we celebrate birth. I love it. Carla, no unfinished business with my important relationships. Really nice, Carla. I really like that. Peggy, for my family to feel like I'm ready to let me go. Okay. Yeah, so a sort of flavor of I'm ready, they're ready, we're going to all let go here. I love it. Anyone else? I have been holding the phrase for many years that my friend Mary introduced me to, which is, and we modeled a course after it, is a good death is a death where you're walking towards it. Good death is a death where you're walking towards it. Which encompasses a lot of what y'all are saying, right? You know, I've often also said, you know, when we're externally and internally prepared, although there's moments that I contemplate, like, oh, am I dying? Because, you know, I do this whole crazy, like, maybe I'm dying right now. Maybe I'm dying right now. And then I'll have a catch of fear, like, but I'm not ready, you know? And so I don't know, maybe that never goes away. Maybe as mortal beings, we never ever lose the catch of fear, right? It's a really interesting question. So how do we prepare for a good death, right? There's these external preparations that we've been talking about for weeks, and we're going to continue talking about. There's also these internal preparations. This is my friend Kim Chi, who had a potlatch giveaway. She knew she was dying, and she had a whole big party in our big common space. And she was like, I'm dying. Like, what do you want? Like, and they did an art project. They did a dance project. It was a whole day. It was like, here, take my stuff. And then there was still stuff left over when she did die. And she had she was an artist. She had beautiful, I got a bunch of her paintings. One of them is actually behind me. It's one of hers. And clothes and jewelry and books and journals. And there was this whole table left out at her funeral with all her stuff. And people could just take whatever they wanted. And I just kept seeing these shimmers of her being like these shimmers of gold glitter going everywhere in the world when people would take her stuff with them. It was really awesome. And this is us, Kim Chi and me and my friend Molly at the bank when we had just done all of this paperwork stuff. Yeah. And this is Kim Chi the week before she died. She wanted to get outside, like you said, Meg, and lie on the earth and put her feet on the earth. And she's very internal. Her eyes are closed. She's internal, but there's these three women around her, touching her, holding her, loving her. She was an extrovert. So there was a lot of, I think I shared with you, always a lot of people around. But she was breathing. It was February. This must have been, I don't know, probably around February 5th or so, week or 10 days before she died. And she wanted to be outside. Yeah. So, you know, just when we prepare, as you're starting to see externally, and when we prepare internally, we're guided, right? Our loved ones know what to expect. And when they have a sense of these expectations, then it reduces conflict and shock and stress, right? They know, oh, dad wants to, you know, be pushed out into the ocean. Mom wants to, you know, have a party, whatever it is. And everyone, including us, we're guided by the intentions. So it reduces stress and worry. And I think the most important thing is this really in this liminal space, if we have the opportunity to die in a transition or a process, we go into liminal space. We go in between the worlds. We start preparing for our transition. And if everything's done out externally, and if everything's prepared and we have really focused internally, we can be in that liminal space. And that's a blessing. That's a precious, precious blessing to be able to be in that space. That's where, you know, whatever our spiritual tradition is, that's where we enter the mystical time. That's where the juice is. And if we've done the preparation to be able to stay in mystical space, whether that's our own meditation, our own spiritual practice, our own relationship to divinity, to essence, to God, that's where we dwell. That's where we're going to dwell. And signing, bank statements or bank, transition beneficiary stuff is not really what we want to be doing at that time. Sometimes it's what happens, but ideally that stuff will be cared for because it's not really where our hearts want to be. Our hearts want to be resonating with the frequency of the soul, for lack of a better word. Right. I wanted to give you a couple of more, I have some resources to share with you today, but before we go into financial, I want to give you a couple of songs that I love because music is something you don't have to sit down and watch. Like you don't have to watch like a video, you can play it in the background. And there's a chanting element to many cultures, and the Indian culture or Hindu culture has a lot of amazing chants. And I'm going to read this quote from Osho. It's actually on a different slide. Osho says, "The word mantra is untranslatable in English, but its meaning, its significance can be explained. It's not just something to chant. It's an opportunity to let the concept sink deeply into your being, like the roots go into the earth. The deeper the roots go, the higher the tree can go." So the mantra is like a seed, and then we can practice. So mantras are amazing. So the first one I'm going to start with is Yaima, and Yaima is a band out of Seattle, I think, a duo. It's a music project, Yaima, and they have a beautiful song called Force. And I'll just read you a few of the lyrics. But the chant in this song is, what you give, you take away. What you give, you give, you give, you take away. What you give, you take away. And it's a practice for this constant awareness, like a wave pattern in the body of the cycles of life and death. Every breath is life and death. We breathe in, it's life. We breathe out, it's death. So what you give, you give, you give, you take away. So everything is impermanent. And this song and other songs like it help us remember the impermanence of our lives. And if we can practice that, we can come to the edge of that knowing, that edge of that impermanence. There's another really great chant called Akaal, Akaal. This is a very, very important chant in many ancient traditions. The longing when the soul leaves the body is to go home, right? Whatever that means for us. The journey home. And Akaal, it's usually pronounced with like almost like a UH, Akaal. It's pronounced and it's sung a call, and so what it means is call means death and call means deathlessness, right? So it means death and unable to die. So in a way, it means immortality. A call. And often in some yogic traditions and some Hindu traditions, it's sung for 11 minutes a day for a 17-day period of time. And from their perspective, that's how long the soul sort of stays within the earth's frequency. So we're singing someone home. Akal, we're singing them home. Can be chanted by a group, a church congregation. When we had a very shocking death in our community of a young beloved, 31 years old, in a car crash, and I played this song on repeat for 3 solid days because we were all in absolute shock. And a call is a way for us to sing and move the energy and send the spirit home, especially with a shocking, unexpected death. We want the soul to be able to have a tether to where it's going. So the 2 people that are pictured on this screen that sing it really well, you can just do a YouTube search or a Spotify search or whatever music system you listen to. The left one is Snatum. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce her name. Snatum, I think, is how you pronounce her name, or AM. Kaur. She is an amazing vocalist. And then the one on the right, her name is Ajit, Ajeet. And they both sing Akal, both pre-recorded and live versions. You'll search YouTube and like a million will come up. Akal is a very common chant, so you can practice and play with this. And then the chants that I have, the other ones that I love to listen to. The one on the left is Deva Premal and Mitten. They sing There Is So Much Magnificence. This is a Sufi chant. There is so much magnificence near the ocean. Waves are coming in, waves are coming in. And the Sufis view the ocean as the place to die, right? You'll hear a lot of Rumi poems with this idea of like, this is the shoreless sea. Here, swimming ends always in drowning, right? The shoreless sea, the ocean is the place to die to the ego, to die to the self, to die. So when they talk about there is so much magnificence near the ocean, waves are coming in, waves are coming in. It's a chant. They sing it over and over and over and over again. And it's an opportunity to enter the mystical space of death, life, death, life. So these are just some opportunities. And then I love this, also this chant album by Shantala called The Love Window. And there is a chant specifically on that to Kali, Om Mata Kali. And I have a special affinity to the goddess Kali, who is the goddess of life and death. You'll see her pictured with a necklace of skulls and fire around her and sort of standing on a body, you know, and a decapitated head in her hands, right? This is Kali, death, the goddess of death. And there's a fierceness to her, but she's also, if you study her deeply, she's also the bringer of life and rebirth, because death is never without rebirth. So just an invitation to find your music, your chants, and feel free to try out some of these. You might hate them, you might love them, like it's hard to know. But see if you can sing, chant, sing, hum, something that helps you remember that you're temporary, that you're impermanent this coming week. And see if that doesn't help you do some internal preparation. Snatum Kawar. Thank you, Meg. Yeah, that Meg just posted how to say her name. And then Ajit is the other one, Ajit, who does a call.
I'm actually not sure how to pronounce, but I have heard people say Shanatam. I'm not sure. But her music is what I listened to in both of my childbirths because it's just so, it's such medicine.
Yeah, she's got a frequency to her voice that is, you know, otherworldly, and so does Ajit. I mean, you find these folks who chant, and David Pramal, people love David Pramal, and it takes you places. I don't understand, but the frequency and the resonance of the voice. Yeah, so those are some resources. I really love that this practice, and I'm going to join you this week. And I'd love for us to come together next week and spend a little time of like, how was that chanting? Right. I'm going to read Michael's answer to the what's a good death. And Michael says, feeling accepting and trusting the wholeness, oneness that I am and I'm part of, and feeling my infinite consciousness. Right. In many, many traditions the world over, we are told that consciousness does not die, only the body. So that's for us to really contemplate the koan of that, the absolute puzzle of that, the non-duality of that. And I think music can take us there, like almost like nothing else. And I see you, Misha has a song. I wanna suggest, Misha, if you could sing it and record it and then send us a link. I think that would be awesome. She's written a song about death. And then send us a link to it. Yeah, I love that idea. Right. Okay, so Meg is putting other song suggestions here. Grace, Longtime Sun, and Deep Blue Sea.
Those all three by Shanatam Kaur.
Okay, got it. I'm gonna make a little section on my resource page because I have never done this, but like some of these songs and chants, and I will add yours to that, Meg, as well. Anything about these songs? Any comments, questions? And people feel drawn to that suggestion about playing with song and chant this week. Great. Yeah, you can't go wrong. And then once you find that person that you love to hear, you might just sink deeper into their chants and just really work with that. There's Christian chants also, not my background, but absolutely can find Christian chants and probably Islam chants. Oh, a playlist on Spotify. What a good idea. Ooh, 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 ooh. Death chants on Spotify. All right, maybe someone will take up the gauntlet of that. Awesome. I love that. Okay. All right, now on the heels of chanting, we're going to talk about finances. The paradox of life. Okay. All right. This is a brief overview. It's not comprehensive. You're going to have to do a lot of this work outside of class, but it's giving you much like I love to do. It's giving you a framework for you to understand what needs to be done so you can then do it. So back to my little list of the 3 categories of end of life paperwork. We really focused for 3 solid weeks on the first column because it's the most complicated. Well, in some ways it is. And then we have after death care, which we're going to do next week. And then the 3rd column is financial. And I just have lots of words here, which I'm going to go through. we could do, probably bring in guest speakers and do all kinds of things around the financial. It's just, yeah, it is in other ways the most complicated. So I'm going to start with wills. Just very briefly, wills and trusts are going to cover your estate, your property, your belongings, right? It's really good to get a lawyer for your financial stuff, for your will. I did my own DIY will and had it looked at by a friend. My intention is to get it to an actual lawyer and say, like, does this actually work? But my financial stuff has been changing so much. I'm sort of waiting for it to all settle down. And there's a link on my resource page that someone sent me to a DIY, a do-it-yourself will website. I have absolutely no idea if that is a functional thing, but it's worth checking out if you don't have a lot or you don't have a lot of money to pay for a lawyer and you just want to wing it. I'm curious. I mean, you won't know really until you're dead if it works. So, but if you've got a lot of stuff and you have a lot of money, you probably already know how to do the will thing. Trusts are this ironclad legal structure that doesn't need to be probated. So what probate means is it goes through your local county's court system to make sure that it's documented well and that people don't have disputes over it, and it gets adjudicated, like they have to stamp it in court, and it goes, it goes through, and the executor then gets to be able to hand out the money or hand out the goods, sell the house, whatever needs to get done. So much like the healthcare power of attorney, you will assign an executor. Let me say a little bit about, there's also, let me come back to that. Your executor is different than your financial power of attorney, and I'll tell you why, but the executor is the one who gets to handle your affairs after you're dead. They get control over what happens to your assets when you're gone. That's called the executor. And in most wills, it's listed 3 people. Here's my first choice, here's my second choice, here's my third choice. So it's much like the healthcare agent where you have options. If someone doesn't want to do it, it would go to the next person. I believe that there's ways to take classes about all of this, like the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute, OLLI, which is usually based out of local universities, is a sort of education for the 50 crowd and over, and they have all kinds of classes, ceramics classes, art classes, but they often have will, like end of life, or like particularly financial planning for elders, right? Because these are older folks that are taking OLLI classes. I might actually take one and then I can represent this better. It's a really good point. I'm gonna make myself a note. Because there's a lot to wade through. Okay. Something you can do yourself is make sure your beneficiaries on all of your sort of cash and IRAs, money markets, checking and savings accounts are who you want it to be. Beneficiaries is something you can do yourself. And most people, I have listed here a beneficiary, a transfer on death, a payable on death. These are really silly financial terms that sort of all mean, whoop, sorry. I'm so sorry. Gonna mute myself for a second. Yeah, wow, technology, you are really showing up today. Sorry about that. So transfer on death and payable on death are pretty much the same thing as a beneficiary. And financial institutions call it different things, but for example, in a checking account, if you open a checking account or a savings account at a local bank, they do not ask you when you open that account who you want your beneficiary to be. They do not ask you. So if you have not asked them to name someone, it's basically no one, and you'd have to probate that account. But if you had, for example, a beneficiary listed, it would go directly to that person. It doesn't go through probate. So for example, if I have a savings account, let's say I have $20,000 in my savings account, I have not listed a beneficiary, I can go to that bank and say, hey, I'd like to fill out a beneficiary form for my savings account. And they will happily give you that. They will happily say, sure, name your beneficiary. But until you ask, they don't do that. So most people don't realize that. IRAs are a little different. They do sometimes ask if you have an annuity or sort of something that folks as they get older do. But generally speaking, you should check because it's possible that they didn't ask, right? So you could have an IRA, you could have a non-retirement or retirement investment account of any kind. And it's the same thing. You need to ask them about beneficiaries. And they call it transfer on death, which is, it's also not probated. They're their own private institution and they say, okay, when Maggie Smith dies, I'm going to give this money to her beneficiary, Ben Jones. And that just goes right to that person. It doesn't go through probate. It's usually settled in a few days if the executor provides a death certificate. So, hey, Maggie Smith has died. Here's her death certificate. I need you to release that money to their beneficiary. But the executor is going to need to do that. Otherwise, it just sits there. The money will just sit there for time immemorial, right? So these are things that that are helpful to check. I have a bit of a horror story about a dear friend who in my community who this is such a cautionary tale on so many levels. Having stomach pains, got brought to the hospital, found out he had stage 4 pancreatic cancer. The doctors, the oncologist wasn't brave enough to tell him he was dying. So they said, well, if you get treatment, you could live for a year or two. It turned out he had 30 days. He was dead in 30 days, right? So, and he didn't really get on it around his paperwork, although in those 30 days, he certainly could have if he had been told a more realistic time frame, but he didn't focus on that. He focused on other things, just like navigating. And he had a bitter divorce, really bitter, like one of the hardest that I've ever seen in community. And one of his IRA accounts or one of his investment accounts, $65,000 went to his ex-wife. Nothing to be done, right? He would have cringed knowing that. It's not what he wanted. He wanted to feed the community. He wanted to support young people. He wanted all these other things for it. And it's not what he got because he didn't check his beneficiaries because he was told that he had longer to live than he did. So now is the time to check your beneficiaries. If it's an ex-husband or wife, you're not going to love that, right? Potentially. Same with, so IRAs, life insurance policies, annuities, retirement plans, non-retirement and retirement accounts, money markets, checking, savings. You have access to all of those things. Easy peasy. Any questions about beneficiaries? Okay, put that on your checklist to do. On your checklist, there's a section for financial and you want to remind yourself to check your beneficiaries. and put anything else you need to do or want to do around wills on there, next steps around wills. You can look on my page for the link to the do-it-yourself, or you can reach out to a lawyer. I had a dear friend who took this class several times, who got all her paperwork together in one pile and then hired a lawyer and said, I need you to look over all of this. And the lawyer was willing. She shopped around to find a lawyer who was willing to work with what she had already done, and who then said, well, I would change this, or I would amend this, or I would add this, and otherwise you're good to go. What most lawyers do is they sell a package, and they say, we're willing to do all your end of life paperwork for you for one set price, and that includes end of life directives, the will, and your after death care or something. They'll do a whole package. And lots of people do that, whatever that would cost, $1,000, or I don't even know. But it's like, it's probably less. It might cost less than having them review your already done paperwork. The advantage of that is it's all one shot. It's all done at once. The disadvantage is that you don't have a lot of relationship to that paperwork. It's all sort of a template, a form, a legal thing. You give them, what you want, and then they sort of spit out the answers, and you just sign everything. So often I find when people have done that with a lawyer, like they have everything in place, but they don't really understand what they agreed to and what they signed and what it all means. So doing this class and then working with a lawyer seems to me like the best of both worlds. You've got your death literacy that you've created from this class, and then you can work with their templates if you want to, or have them work with yours. So finding a lawyer, and I have on my resource page the lawyer that my friend Benita used, who's willing to, and I called her and I asked her, I was like, are you open to people from my end of life course coming to you and doing the same thing Benita did, which is like handing you a bunch of stuff to have you review it? And she's like, yeah, I totally do that. Meg, so if you're on a joint account with someone else and that person dies, you're still an account holder of that account. So that's what Kimchi and I did. I was navigating all of her financial stuff at the end of her life, which wasn't much. She was an artist. She didn't have a lot. But what we did was she trusted me enough that I became a joint account holder on all of her accounts. So then they would just come to me upon her death. I was already an owner of that account, and then I could just close it or not close it, distribute the money how she wanted the money distributed. So that's certainly an option.
My point is that
Yeah, I'm
if
getting to your point. A co-signer is a very different thing. And a co-signer really means like they're backing your loan or something, isn't it?
it can be different things.
Okay.
You can put some
co-signer,
co-signer to just so that they can like write checks and stuff. But if they're not listed as the beneficiary, then they don't get access at all.
probably not. No. But now we're getting into the financial power of attorney, or durable power of attorney. Now you've been hearing this word, power of attorney. There's two different kinds: healthcare power of attorney, financial power of attorney. Two different kinds, right? The healthcare power of attorney is much like the healthcare agent that we've been talking about in Wish 1, that makes decisions for you at the end of your life, medical and health decisions. They do not have access to your bank accounts. That's a separate thing. Your financial power of attorney, they could be the same person, no problem, but you need two different forms, right? Your financial, or often called durable power of attorney, is the person who can access your bank accounts to care for you when you're not able to. Generally speaking, people don't, I don't know if this is true. the financial power of attorney would need to come to the bank and present this document and say, my friend Maggie or my mama or my daughter or whoever, my friend is in the hospital, not making decisions, and here's the proof that I can sign checks and I can access their bank account. I have a link here. It's also on my resources page. This is a North Carolina Durable Power of Attorney form. You can find one in your own state. Susan.
Yeah, it seems like, there could be an awkward situation if the person who had the say over healthcare decisions was unable to pay for them because they, didn't have that capability. It belonged to somebody else.
Yep. Yeah, that is true. And that's often a scurry in these situations. It happened in my life. My aunt was in the hospital in Hawaii and I was her financial power of attorney, and my mom was sort of acting as her healthcare agent because she was there in the state and on the same island, but she didn't really have authority. But when there's no paperwork and someone is a family member and they just show up, the hospital's like, oh, okay, well, listen to this person because there's no one else to listen to, right? And so then my mom was there and I was the financial, and I had to call the bank and I had to, so yes, it is a juggle. And ideally these people would get along. I get along well enough with my mom and I was able to do it. And it was still a bit of a tug of war around how to get this financial institution and how do I FedEx this check? Like, how do I do this thing? Right. And then we're on the phone, we're trying to make decisions for her after hospital care. So, it gets complicated quickly.
Yeah, it seems to me that, if I trusted somebody to be my healthcare agent, I would also trust them with my finances.
Potentially, that may not be true in all cases, because I might choose my friend who's fierce with medical institutions to be my healthcare agent, but I might choose my partner or a different friend who's, going to be good with the money. I might choose two different people.
Yeah, I mean, I would tend to trust my healthcare agent with my finances perhaps more than I would trust the person who had my finances with my healthcare decisions.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Misha, really good question. I'm gonna get it. So beneficiary, let's slow down and back up. The beneficiary is the person who receives the money when you die. They could have nothing to do with your death. They could have been a niece or nephew that lives out of the country. Could be, it's someone that you want, your checking account that has the $20,000 in it, you want them to get that. Beneficiary is a person who gets the money from a certain account. They benefit from your financial power of attorney is the one who is has financial access and is making financial decisions while you're still alive. Power of attorney means they have agencies, they have authority. They are your financial or durable power of attorney while you're still alive. Once you die, their authority ends. The moment you die, the financial power of attorney's authority ends and the executor's authority kicks in. And the executor and the financial power of attorney may be the same person. All three of these may be the same person. But that's up to you. I'll say it one more time. The beneficiary, it's usually just a quick card you fill out at the bank or wherever your financial institutions, and say, I want my niece or nephew or my friend to get this money when I die. It's just sort of a safety precaution. I think it's filled out, it's there, they get that. financial or durable power of attorney handles your finances when you are incapacitated, when you can't. They have access, they can get access to your checking account, they can get access to your money to pay for care, to pay for home care, to pay for whatever needs to happen. Their power ends when you die and the executor takes over. Now suddenly they're dealing with your estate. That becomes the executor.
Does who certifies that the person is incompetent and so that the financial durable power of attorney can take over?
Yeah, that's a very astute question. That's a great question. I was asking myself the same thing when I was telling you all that. Like, I don't remember. I think that's a great question. I was wondering if the institution needs proof that their customer is not able to make decisions, or if the financial power of attorney document is all they need. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't remember when I was in that situation that they asked me for any proof. I think I just said, hey, here's my financial power of attorney document. My aunt is in the hospital. She's unconscious. We need to make some decisions. I need to sign some of these checks. And they were like, okay, got it. We'll put this on file. Your signature's fine on the checks. That's my memory. Karen.
The way I understand it is the durable power of attorney is good at any point in time, whether you're incapacitated or not. Someone
Okay.
who has the durable power of attorney
Yeah.
can do stuff. Yeah.
You got to really trust them, because they could hit you on the head and then go to the bank and take all your money out. So yeah, you got to trust them. And then you have these documents in your end of life paperwork. It's not like it's floating around out there on the internet, so thank you, Karen. That's helpful. The difference between a beneficiary and a joint checking account holder. So my partner and I, we are joint account holders on an account, right? We have several joint accounts. We pay all our bills out of it. If I die, the account is still his, right? We have the account together. We're on it together. If he dies, the account is still mine. No problem. His name is still there. I don't need his signature to get anything out. We have checks that have both of our names on it. Many of you probably have this. It's just standard practice usually for married people, right? And then we haven't listed, if I actually have my own separate checking accounts, several of them, 3 or 4 or 5 of them, and those that I have standalone, I have gone to the bank and I have named beneficiaries for all of those. Because if I die, those accounts, my partner won't be able to access them because his name is not on them. Right? The bank is like, who are you? We don't know who you are. You have a joint account with her over here, but these are her accounts only. We're not giving you this money. So I have to name a beneficiary to those. Now, when Kimchi was sick, she added me as if, as a partner, she added me to a joint checking account. So now both of our names are on the checks. Kimchi Rylander and Lee Warren. And so I then was a part owner of that account with her. It was a quirky workaround, but it was the easiest, quickest thing for us to do in that moment. And then once she died, I owned that account, and then I distributed that money how she wanted it. Helpful? Okay. I was able to close that account that I held jointly with Kimchi because once I was on it as a joint account holder, it was equally mine. Much like that thing where my partner and I are equal partners in this joint checking account, there's no difference between us. So we did that.
There was a problem once with a joint account holder where I couldn't close the account without a signature from the.
In that case, you might present a death certificate. I think you're right about that. I think I must have had to present a death certificate and say, you know, this is our account. Kimchi has died. I'd like to close this account.
Right.
Yep. Very good. Other questions? Really good questions, y'all, to clear this up. Beneficiaries, financial power of attorneys, executors. The simple and easy, if you do nothing else, the simple, easy thing to do is just check all of your accounts and make sure the beneficiaries are named. Super simple. Misha.
So if you send the money to your whatever allotted amount of money to the beneficiary, and then after you die, can the executor allocate any of the money that goes to the beneficiary?
Thank you. Beneficiaries are ironclad.
Okay.
Ironclad. If you have, like, let's say someone has a $200,000 savings account and they name a beneficiary as one of their children, and then the will says it was supposed to go to a different child, the beneficiary will generally win out because that financial institution is beholden to their customer and is beholden to what the customer has signed on their record.
Mhm.
Now, if
Mhm.
child number 2 says that's not fair, the will says it's supposed to go to me, they take that to court. That's a
Mhm.
fight they would take and have in probate. But
Okay.
that money would have already been, that check would have already been signed and delivered to the beneficiary. It's very hard to get around an institution's beneficiary because they're dedicated to that customer. So, so Peggy, you're saying I have 3 kids and just 1 payable on death. And what did you say here? My sister said that legally the money is just his. Who's his? What does his mean? Get on mute. I think Becky can't find her unmute button. That's all right, sweetie. We'll get back to you when you can find it. Susan.
No, I got it.
Rich,
Sorry.
you got it.
No, my son is payable on death, but I have 2 daughters.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting question, which is, you know, can the executor, you know, you could certainly make all your beneficiaries your executor and then let your executor sort of navigate the will. That's an interesting way to do it. Yeah, that's an option. But yeah, the beneficiary is pretty ironclad. These institutions do not screw around with beneficiaries. And then if you don't list any beneficiaries, my understanding is that at probate, the executor would be, you know, whatever they call that, they certify this is the executor, and then the executor can go into the bank and have a death certificate and say, I'm the executor to this person. I want that money. And if there's no beneficiary, that's going to be easier. We had a situation with someone in our community that died who had a beneficiary and we didn't know who it was. This was the craziest thing. So the executor went to probate, got the form, like, I'm the executor, here's the death certificate, I want the money. And this person's like, and the bank was like, no, there's a beneficiary named here. And they were like, well, who's the beneficiary? And they're like, we can't tell you. So the beneficiary was never able to get the money because we didn't know who it was. We tried all these different names. We're like, how about this person? How about this person? How about this person? Sat there for years. I don't even know what the outcome was, but because we didn't know, we weren't able to get that person the money. And the bank didn't have the contact information for the beneficiary. It was the beneficiary's job to reach out to the bank. So we were really stuck. So that's another cautionary tale.
So the
Susan,
beneficiary didn't even know?
the beneficiary didn't know
Wow.
because it was, you know, this is a community person. She didn't have children. She didn't have a spouse. And so she named somebody, one of her, you know, social justice friends or we had no idea. We couldn't figure it out. So then it's sitting there in limbo. Anyway, Susan, finally.
I know that this is this paperwork subject makes me sick to my stomach. And but you know, I realize that actually what it is, it's not just papers and just dollars, which don't exist anyway. It's actually settling your relationships, right? That's what you're really doing, you know.
I know it. Yes, you're absolutely right.
I think some of these questions I got to take to the bank because, you know, I would never have imagined that that the beneficiary had to reach out to the bank. I mean, what if they're like on the other side of the world and they have no idea that their friend died and left them all this money? You know, what the hell?
The banks don't know you died. They have no idea, you know. They have, well, first of all, let me slow down. Thank you for saying that. This is a administrative, bureaucratic, really tricky thing that is not comfortable for most of us. So thank you for naming that it makes you sick to your stomach, because it's tricky. So thank you. Let's just feel any tension we have in our bodies around navigating these pieces. Absolutely. And one more point is we make it easier on everyone to tend to our death if we deal with this ahead of time. So despite how tense this can be, you're gonna be giving a really big gift to the people who love you and who want to be in their own liminal space at your death if you deal with this, as unpleasant as it may be. Thank you. And then the second piece you were saying is, you know, I would ask your bank their policy. And yeah, they, you know, people, I'm sure this has happened. People die and decades go by and the money is still sitting there. How would they know? They wouldn't know. Yeah. It's up to somebody to go into the bank with a death certificate and say, hey, I'm dealing with this now. And if they don't have the address of the beneficiary, my bank did not take addresses. They just took a name. That's all they took. So they do not say, you know, we're going to deal with this. Yeah.
How many people have the same name? You know, in some cases, lots. So which Joe Smith is it?
Exactly. Thank you. Good questions. Really good questions. I'd love to hear. Usually what you do when you put a beneficiary in is you do it with the teller and they have no idea. They have no idea. These tellers are, you know, often minimum wage folks doing customer service in a tricky situation. So you could certainly ask for a bank manager. I love these questions. If there's no beneficiary, wouldn't it go to the next of kin? Banks don't deal with next of kin. They deal with executors. They deal with executors, potentially spouse. It probably depends on the institution. You know, they have their fine print. All right, Susan, anything else there?
No, I'm sorry. I just lowered it.
Great. Meg.
Yeah, I wrote my questions in the chat too. I'm wondering if you can have two beneficiaries, like if you have two kids, can you just say 50% to each? Don't know. Maybe.
I don't think so.
Okay, and then if it's a joint account, so like if my husband and I have an account, I can't just go in and say, I want this to be the beneficiary, right? We probably both have to do that together.
Good question. You probably both, like Karen was saying, you know how when you open it, you need both signatures? You probably need both signatures to do any big changes. That's my guess, but you can ask the bank.
That makes sense. And then my other question is about how medical bills get paid. So say for example, I'm the executor of the will and the durable power of attorney, but my brother, whom I love, gets for the record, is the beneficiary of my parents' bank accounts. So like he gets their money, but then I'm responsible for like sorting out the medical bills and everything. Like does any responsibility of bills go along with
No,
receiving?
it's the estate. How probate looks at that is it's the estate. The estate has assets and the estate has liabilities.
So the estate does not include the bank account?
Oh, yeah, the estate includes all of it, but in terms of the medical bills, that's for the executor to, like, the executor is sitting with a pot of assets and a pot of liabilities, and it's up to them to reconcile all of these things. Now, medical bills could be like, hey, this person died, and that we don't have the money to cover this in the estate, would like to settle, or we're not going to pay this, or whatever. I mean, there's a million and one ways to discharge of these things, but that's the executor's role. And if there is no executor assigned, I think, I don't know exactly how the probate system, if there's no one, how does the probate system deal with someone's assets and liabilities? I don't know the answer to that.
They probably have the equivalent of like a public defender or somebody who just.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So my question is like, if I'm the executor and you say I have a pot of assets and a pot of liabilities, but what if the pot of assets isn't really? What if because everything my parents had just went to my brother because he was the beneficiary of the bank account? Then like, does he get off with the whatever it was?
You'd have to fight that out in court. And that's what probate does. Like they deal with complicated issues like this.
see.
Like, hey, one sibling got all the money and I got all the bills. Like this, this isn't working. And probate would be like, oh, got you. The will says this, the bank said this, and you said this. We're going to deem that this is what's supposed to happen.
I gotcha. The judge decides.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, can you talk briefly about how debt and bills does work post death? Like what remains, what's dissolved? Like you said, the executor has to like deal with that and figure out like what liabilities need to be paid and how to pay them. But like is I think student loans get dissolved, right? What about like credit card debt, or if like people still owe on their mortgage and does the house just get repossessed, or like is all medical debt like just still there that like whoever the executor is like just has to pay off however much that is? Like how does that work?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I don't know all the variables, and they're, much like death, there can be so many variables that'll make your head spin. Let's take some of the simple ones. Credit card companies. The executor would present a death certificate and say, sorry.
Again, there, Lee.
What's that?
Do you mind starting back over? Your audio cut out.
Okay. How's this? Is it more stable now? Okay. A million variables. Let's try simple to more complex. Credit card companies, you send the executor sends a death certificate and says, we will not be paying this balance. The credit card company, generally speaking, is like, I'm so sorry for your loss. Great, we'll write it off. They might say, we're so sorry for your loss. We're coming after the estate. Probably depends on the balance of that credit card. Depends. Student loans, great question. Probably dissolved. Again, it depends on how much money is in the estate. If a student loan was attached to somebody with a lot of money, I imagine the student loan people would want to get in line for some of that money also. Would they have the resources to do that? I don't know. I don't know. They can look up, probate is publicly available information. So they can look up that information on probate. Oh. Probate is public information. What were the other ones you named? You named student loans, mortgage.
Mortgage, medical bills.
Yeah. Medical bills is going to be in the same category with other debtors. They can choose to come after the estate. Often when you send them a death certificate, they just write it off. Mortgage is an interesting thing because there's a big asset attached to it.
You're
Okay.
frozen.
Yeah.
We're frozen out.
Yeah, I think I'm back. Let me see if I can. Hmm. How is it? Am I still frozen?
No, you're okay right now.
Okay. If someone is willed the house, they would take over the payments for that. Right? They would present the death certificate and the executor would present the death certificate and their, their credentials and the probated document to the mortgage company and say, Toby, etc., now owns this house. They're going to take over the mortgage payments. If you don't have anyone in your will, then it would go through probate. Potentially go back to the bank if there's a mortgage, or someone could vie for it. Like, hey, this was my aunt. She didn't have children. I am her next of kin. I would like that house. I will take over the mortgage. And the probate judge will say, oh, that makes complete sense. Here you go. Is there anybody else that wants this house? Great. Okay, here you go. So really, a lot of this happens in probate. Now, if you don't want to go through probate and you know exactly what you want and you know exactly who's going to get it, then you would probably go the route of a trust. A trust is more ironclad. All the assets are owned by that trust. It's more expensive to do with a lawyer, but for lots of people, it's worth it because then it doesn't have to go to probate. Did I answer all your questions, Tessa? Okay. It's it's a maze for someone to deal with at the end of life. You're spending months navigating this stuff and sometimes years. If stuff gets caught up in probate, you've heard that, like, something's hung up in probate. That's because two different people are vying for something, or there's contradictory information in the will and the beneficiary, right? And so then they're having to, your tax dollars pay for this. Like, your county is dealing with this, right? So if you want to ease off on your loved one's struggle around all of this, you just make these things really clear. Anything else? Financial stuff. Another piece. Oh, and the estate must file a tax return. It's probably true. I've not done that. The two other things I would love for you to consider with your end of life financial stuff is the passwords to everything that exists in your life, to your subscriptions that are going to keep charging you after you're dead. Endless subscriptions, right? Netflix, Pandora. Somebody's got to get your passwords and get in there and cancel that stuff. What about a password to your email? People are emailing you. Where did Susan go? Where did whoever go? Passwords. So you can create, you can go into Gmail or whatever email program and say, our beloved has passed. You won't get a return email. Oh, passwords for the bank, passwords for all kinds of stuff. Big deal. Big deal. What are you laughing at, Susan?
It's so hard to get out of the world.
So hard to get out of the world, right? They don't let you go even when you're dead. They want you to watch their Netflix shows.
It's like packing for a trip and you can never finish packing.
Totally. You are electronically alive forever. Yeah, I mean, Facebook page is an interesting one. People sometimes get in there and turn it into a memorial page, right? So then folks can realize the person has passed, and then what if they're posting on there? It's more of a memorial page than a living person page, because there's nothing weirder than knowing someone died and then seeing a Facebook post from them, right? Like, so how do you navigate that on social media? So making sure somebody has the master passcode to your passcodes, helpful, super helpful. And then a budget for end of life. Have you, we're going to talk about death after death care next week, but did you create a budget for what you might need at the end of life for your people to care for you, so that it doesn't have to come out of their bank accounts? Okay, this was a lot of stuff. You did great. How are you doing? How's everyone doing? Financial stuff. Tricky. Susan.
Yeah, I want to say that, I came into this whole thorny area of finances when I did the Go Wish cards, and then I wrote it up as basically as a a mission statement. And then I go, oh shit, how am I going to pay for all this? And then I realized, actually, because we do own a house here, hey, reverse mortgage. And it never even occurred to me before, but I'm just sitting on a big pile here, might as well use it up.
What does reverse mortgage mean? You mean when you sell your house, your estate will have money?
No, it means that, you apply to the bank for a reverse mortgage, they pay you, but then basically, and you still hold title to it, and you don't have to pay taxes on that money. It's considered like a repayment of a loan. But the thing is, when you die, the house is not part of your estate. It has to, that loan either has to be repaid to the bank, the reverse mortgage has to be paid to the bank, or the bank actually has your house.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, worth looking into. Seems like
Yeah.
there's lots of different options. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, so everybody's heads are spinning.
Hey, Leah, I heard you say you might tell us some after death stories.
Yeah, we're not gonna have time today, but I do have some resources for you.
Can we do something different for the last 10 minutes?
Sure. Yeah. Yep. Any other financial stuff? The way to do the financial stuff is step by step, little by little. And this is an opportunity for you to employ your buddy to say, hey, I need to do one step a month. Can you hold my hand with this? Can you help me be accountable to this? Can we each do one financial step a month? It's better than nothing, right? Beneficiaries. I want to do that in February. So we get overwhelmed. Financial stuff overwhelms most of us. How can you write it on your checklist and make it as kind and gentle to yourself around the financial stuff? The checklist does have a financial section, and it has a section on the end that is all blank. So you can fill out whatever you need to there for your situation. Okay. Yes. Susan, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just want to say, Brenda, my death buddy, who can't be here this morning, but we're going to be meeting later in a few days. She and I both, unaware that we were doing it, we each bought knock boxes, the next of kin boxes, with all the little file folders and the checklists and whatnot. So I think what I'm going to do is next time we get together, I'm going to say, let's fill out our knock boxes together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Great. Yeah, the knock boxes have way more tabs than even I'm talking about. So like your auto title, like the title for your car, right? Like think of that. Like that's a random thing. Where is someone going to find the title to your car? I mean, the knockbox has all of those tabs where you just stick the stuff in there, you know?
Yeah, and also, the good thing is they have checklists of like what needs to be on file.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Perfect. Perfect. Somebody figured that out. That is brilliant. You gotta love the internet today.
I do. When
Really.
it works.
All right, let's take a couple of breaths. I'm going to share these last few resources and I'm going to embed some stories into them to change the vibe a little bit. This is a really great opportunity. I'm teaching next week, 2 days through the Foundation for Intentional Community. This is my last teaching gig with them ever. I've just decided I'm not working with them anymore. I love this organization so much and they pay me almost nothing. And I just stepped out of intentional community. I sold my place. And so I'm being in integrity with myself and not teaching with them anymore. But they have this super affordable 4-hour course, 2 hours on the 20th and 2 hours on the 22nd, which is Death and Dying in Community. That's with me. Their donation, give as much as you can to this organization because they're completely broke, but they charge, the donation for this is starting at $20. $20 and going up to $60, or you can create a custom amount. It's a great class and it's going to be way more breadth around what my stories and community that you're going to get in this class, because we're doing so much more, but this class is so specific. So if you want to take that class, sign up for it, pay for it, and then even if you can't attend, they'll send you the recording. So it's another resource. Just more depth from me on this topic next week. That's one resource. The other resource is, if you're local to me, some of you are, Last Ecstatic Days, incredible film about a man named Ethan Sisser who wanted to make the end of his life, much like Kimchi in my life, who wanted to make the end of his life an educational experience. They filmed his whole dying process. And Aditi, who you saw at the beginning on the little video snippet I sent you, is featured in this film. It was filmed. It's basically what birthed the CCLD, the Center for Conscious Living and Dying. This death birthed that whole project because it was so powerful for everyone involved. You can watch a trailer to this, The Last Ecstatic Days. I'm hosting a screening on the 24th. There's 3 screenings that day, one at noon, one at 3, and one at 6. I'm hosting the one at 6 and a discussion. It's in West Asheville. And the film is very, very moving. One of my friends was the filmmaker on this film. I have asked the organizers, is there a way to watch this online? Because I keep being asked that question and I don't know the answer. So I will find out for you. So you're welcome to come to that. This is the 6 p.m. screening. I will give you some other beautiful folks. Sherry and Andrew are hosting at noon. Gary and Mountain are hosting a queer version, like they're doing a queer focused version at 3. So here are the links to buy the tickets. And likewise, these tickets are, they start at $10. So super affordable. But you can give as much as you can, and the proceeds benefit CCLD. So if you're coming, you can give more of a donation. That would be great. CCLD does not accept grants that limit their scope. So they can't really work with hospice. They can't really work with institutions because they want to do it the way they want to do it. And it's really groundbreaking work. So they rely on donations from the community. And the last thing I'll say is I'm going to do another end of life preparation in the fall, and I really want y'all's feedback, and I want to tell you exactly what I want your feedback on. It's just never enough time. Like I think, you know, we did 6 weeks. I feel like I could do 8 or even 12 weeks. I was thinking about a 13-week. And then 2.5 hours per week, because I find with 2 hours with us, we're just not quite done. Like we could use 20 minutes of integration connection. I'm going to give you all half off of this course. You can do it again if you want to, because we're not going to get to some of the things I wanted to get to here. But I do want your feedback, having gone through this in this longer format, of like, could you tolerate an 8 or 12-week class? Could you tolerate 2.5 hours a week? Like, what do you think is best? Because we're still, believe it or not, we're still skimming the surface of this stuff. Like, we could spend so much more time together and go into so many more details if we had more time together. So I'm really wanting your feedback. So whether I might leave a little time at the last class, but if you think to email me or text me, I'd love your input. And then the last piece is next week. This is what I have on our agenda: after death options, death stories. And Karen, let's talk about the psychedelics piece, and then after death paperwork. That's going to be the whole time. Okay. I have one final closing poem from Mary Oliver. And I will stay on as usual for about 15 minutes after class, and we can sit and digest and integrate and chat. So Mary Oliver says, to live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. To live in this world, you must be able to do 3 things. To love what is mortal, to hold it against your bones, knowing your own life depends on it, and when the time comes to let it go, to let it go. Good job this week, y'all. Last week and this week, you've been really surfing the waves of a lot of content. Thank you for being here. Go if you must, stay if you will. We'll hang out and chat a little bit. Bye, Meg.
Thank you, Lee. I'm going to go back to bed now.
Good night. Good morning.
See you next week.
Lee, how do you spell that knockbox or whatever it's called?
Knox box. Next of kin. NOKBOX.
Thank you.
yeah, I think I put a link last week, but I'm gonna put it on my resource page. So much information, right? It's crazy. But yeah, like car title. Where on earth would you have to go through people's endless file folders to find that kind of stuff?
It's like a get out of jail. Get out of jail, how to.
Am I frozen now or is Michael frozen? Oh, there we go. How you doing, Karen, Linda, Denise? How y'all doing? Hanging in there?
Hey, Karen, nice to meet a fellow nomad.
Sure, nice to meet you too. So I live in a van and I have
Ooh.
my son-in-law is on my title so that he'll get it if something happens to me. So that takes care of that. But there's still more, as Lee mentioned, the list is long. I mean, I almost have nothing. Everything I own will fit in my van, but still there's stuff to deal with.
Yeah. 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 We make a big footprint, when we live a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't even talk really about purging. Purging stuff. I wanted to get to that. Maybe I'll do that in the last course, like how do we live? We have such a consumer culture. We have all this stuff. Like, what do we do with all that?
That's a good one.
Yeah. How do we simplify as we go?
It kind of occurs to me that I have been actually preparing for death in that way of like just getting rid of everything and
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
I think
yeah.
one of my biggest things is not for my death to be a burden on my children.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. I mean, Marie Kondo, she does a really good job at that, that hold it in your hand. And if it gives you life, keep it. If it doesn't, get rid of it, and then as we become elders, how do we, really start to see that through a more and more nuanced lens, David White has this quote about, becoming intimate with disappearance. How do we become intimate with our own disappearance and not leave the crap for everyone?
Yeah, that really resonates. Thank you. Good to be with you all. Have a good weekend.
Bye, Michael.
Bye.
Lee, when do you want to have a conversation? You want to just text me and
We can have it now.
sure.
Right. Let me stop the recording.